Howdy, howdy, this is AL-BINO. How y'all doing today? Excellent. So, close this out here. So, I want to talk about strategy. Political strategy. Okay? So, we've had in the last 2 months, 2 attempts on the actual life of President Trump. Yes, he was formerly in office, but we call all former presidents president, such as President Reagan, President Bush, President Clinton, President Obama. So he has reached that title. So he is President Trump. He will be President Trump again if he becomes elected in November. But I want to talk about military strategy today because there's been 2 attempts on his life. There's been either a chemical or what I believe is a directed energy weapon attack on some of his, on the Hispanics for Trump contingent that was behind him on the stage in Tucson, Arizona at the Ronstadt Theater. There's been bomb threats called in on different states, different organizations, and on Congress people who are on the same program as Trump. As there's been bomb threats and death threats made to people who work on the campaign, either directly under him on the national campaign or locally. There's been threats made to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. There's been threats made to his former vice presidential running mate. And all of these threats are either coming from supposed foreign parties, which I doubt, or from operatives of the Democrat machine. Okay. Let's look at the people who tried to assassinate Trump. One of them, Mr. Cooks, in many ways has a similar profile to some of the school shooters, right? But yet he was featured on a BlackRock advertisement. He's suspecting of having accounts in foreign countries that are shelter countries, such as the Cayman Islands. And he's supposedly registered Republican, but his activities demonstrate otherwise. Then we look at Mr. Ruth, and he was a recruiter for fighters both in the United States and in other countries for Ukraine. He's suspected to have contacts with Iran. He had the fiduciary resources to move about the way that he did, but he reports either as unemployed or working as a gig worker, averaging about or less than $3,000 a month. He was carrying a weapon where the serial number has been removed. Mr. Crooks was training, or has been seen training, at ranges that are used by Homeland Security personnel. Even though he's not what we would call a sniper, he proved himself to be a decent marksman. At least to the proficiency of somebody who went through basic training in the military. His weapon of choice that he was trained on is very similar to the standard issue weapon for the United States military. civilian version of it. But you're trained to use those weapons the same way, because I favor that weapon because it's an easy weapon to use and I'm very proficient with it. I've used it as a varmint and hunting weapon as well as a home defense weapon. It's a very versatile weapon. It's a weapon that you can train everybody in your house to use proficiently. But his level of training was commensurate to that of somebody who went through at least 6 to 8 weeks of basic at least 6 to 8 weeks of basic training, in that 4 weeks of that was basic rifle marksmanship equivalent. So he was professionally trained. Mr. Cooks. Mr. Ruth, it appears, was also trained fairly well. He had a Kalashnikov type weapon without a serial number, so he was using 7.62. He was placed in he was in place for 12 hours, supposedly when the trip that Donald Trump was taking to his golf course was unplanned. So he knew where to be. He knew the exact spot to be in. He may have connections to the Central Intelligence Agency. Mr. Crooks has intelligence earmarks all over him, either from Homeland Security or somewhere else. The detail around Trump is accidentally on purpose, insufficient in securing medium to long range perimeters. Mr. Trump got lucky both times, in that the second time, one agent just happened to be looking in the direction of where Mr. Ruth had set up his sniper nest and engaged him. But if he hadn't have, then they would have rolled up on that next hole that Mr. Trump was going to shoot at, and they would have had a clean shot within 300 yards. Again, something that somebody with either a Kalashnikov or AR type weapon could engage in with the basic rifle marksmanship type training. So there are intelligence earmarks all over this. Back during the first Trump administration, Chuck Schumer gave a veiled threat to Donald Trump in saying that if Donald Trump upset the intelligence community, that the intelligence community would get him 6 ways to Sunday. I don't think that was a threat. I think that was a promise. I think that's being acted out now. I think that these other incidents are a version of psychological warfare. How do you know all this, Aaron? I served in the United States Army for 17 and a half years. I went through basic training, and of course my military operational school or military operational specialty was tactical and strategic. Satellite communications. I cross-trained in switching, in cabling. I was also trained cross-trained in squad level and team level infantry operations, quick reaction force, site security, land navigation, reconnaissance. I have 6 years overseas. Five of those 6 years were in combat. 13 of the 17 years I was in tactical communications in an echelon above corps communications unit, which was actually 12 of those 13 years was an echelon above corps tactical communications unit, headquartered stateside at the 11th Second Brigade. It is the most deployed unit in the United States military, more than 82nd Airborne, with the exception of Special Forces. This means, because it is a tactical communications unit and it is echelon above corps, that means that whenever the balloon goes up, at the very least, a team or squad or detachment or platoon-sized detachment from 11th Second Brigade and her subordinate battalions are deployed with that unit. So, for example, if 3rd Infantry Division deploys, we will be called upon to send a portion of our assets with them to the front lines. If somebody else deploys, likewise and likewise. So in that unit, the 11th Second Brigade, from Desert Storm until present, because I still kind of, old military veteran, we still kind of have our ear to the ground on these things. From Desert Storm until now, the 11th Second Brigade has had assets in a combat theater since 1990. So 5 of those years when I was in combat were in a combat theater. About 7 months of that, actually about a year and a half of that, I was in a garrison setting with the command unit. The rest of that time, I was either on standby or in forward frontline positions. I've been in positions as remote as Sinjar Mountain on the Syrian border, on a small team connected to 175th Ranger Battalion, and 101st Airborne in 2003 and 2004. We were attached to 3rd Infantry Division when they rolled into Iraq in March of 2003. I was attached to several military police units, providing security for various combat operations throughout Iraq. Small posts outside the wire. I've been on quick reaction teams. I've been in early command or early deployment command packages available to all units in the theater. What they call an early entry command package, meaning that if an emergency quick reaction force is deployed, we go with them. And then I've also spent 4 years at Raven Rock Mountain Facility and Site C at Cascade, Maryland, and Blue Ridge, Pennsylvania, which is known as Cheney's Bunker, which is top level security. It's one of 3 of the places that they take the high level government officials to, in the case of a nuclear, biological, or chemical attack of large scale, or an electromagnetic attack. So I've done a lot in my military career. I've seen a lot of things. I've been a grunt. I've been a nerd. I've been a techie. I'm trained in a lot of things. I'm not trained in Special Forces, but I have deployed with them. Some of the people and some of the units that I was attached to in the past would include people like Nick Freitas. I have, that I can wear as my combat patch, the 11th SIG patch, the 101st Airborne patch, the 3rd COSCOM patch, 174 or 173rd military police patch, CENTCOM patch. I can wear a lot of different patches. It's my combat patch if I were to choose to do so. Also spent a year in Korea. Believe it or not, Korea is still a hot war, even though we're under an armistice. We're still legally at war with Korea, or North Korea. even though that is an armistice or a ceasefire, there's still action in what they call the 2nd Infantry Division sector, north of Seoul. I have been on exercises in that region, and we've seen people being engaged there sporadically. But, once again, not reported. There are things that were misreported in the news that I have firsthand knowledge of, that I know are not true. There are also things that are not reported in the news that I know existed or know that happened. I know that certain things that were said that had existed do exist, and then they turned around and said they didn't exist, but we know they existed because we saw them. I said all that to say this. What they are playing on us, what the Democrat machine and the deep state is playing on the United States, is what we call asymmetrical psychological warfare and domestic terrorism. Here's how it works. Well, here are some facets of how it works. I believe that the first attempt on Donald Trump's life was a serious attempt. I also believe that the second one was too. I believe that the attack, if it's chemical or directed energy weapon, which is available to all large metropolitan police departments for riot disbursement, was used as an intimidation tactic in Tucson, Arizona. I believe that the death threats, the bomb threats that are being called in to certain members of the Republican Party or certain officials within the party or elected officials that are allied to President Trump, I think those are intimidation tactics as well. This asymmetrical warfare that they're playing on us is based upon the Cloward and Piven theory. And it's based on, I can't remember his name. I'm tired. I just worked a 13-hour day. It's based on the Saul Alinsky principles as well. Saul Alinsky's principles are based upon Marxist-Leninist revolutionary asymmetrical warfare tactics that were largely employed early on in the Soviet Union and other Eastern Bloc countries, but these are modified for the United States. I believe that a lot of the tactics that Yuri Brezhnev warned us about in the late 1970s and early 1980s are exactly what are being deployed upon us today. Folks, what I'm trying to tell y'all is there is, in fact, a civil war being waged against a segment of the population of the United States by our government currently at present and one of our political candidates. Here's one of the Saul Alinsky principles. Nudge, shove, shoot. Here's another one. It's called the boy cry wolf principle. So, you get a bomb threat. Somebody calls in a bomb threat. Let's pretend that somebody calls in a bomb threat or live shooter threat to the next Trump rally or to a Republican congressional candidate's event. I promise you that an operative will be on the ground somewhere observing the reaction to each one of these false flags in order to learn about potential soft spots, potential avenues of approach, and retreat, and potential ways of funneling crowds or funneling a target into a target area, or finding weaknesses in security, law enforcement, or pressing for moles. The activities of Butler, Pennsylvania, and the activities on the Trump golf course in Florida do indicate that there is, in fact, a mole somewhere within the Secret Service, and contrary to the opinion of Dan Bongino, it may not be at the individual level of the Secret Service, but especially in the situation regarding Florida, it is definitely amongst somebody who was in that skiff, who was briefed on that trip that Donald Trump wanted to take within the last minute notice, and then that individual in that skiff turned around and broadcast that movement to their handler. So it is on Donald Trump's security team, at least one of them. So what is going on? The nudge phase of this, in the Saul-Alinsky principle, was all the way back during the 2016 or the 2017 to 2021 Donald Trump administration, and during his first campaign. We moved into the shove phase with COVID. COVID was a deep state operation by which to unseat President Trump. Remember Nancy Pelosi that year, State of the Union address, tore up the papers, stormed out. Then later that year, she said with confidence, before the election was even held, Donald Trump will not be president of the United States again. He will not win. She knew this. And then, boom, COVID. And all the bullshit that happened around it. So, we are now, or the shove phase was then from COVID until now. So all the stuff from Trump being in court, being convicted, the mugshots, the stuff that they're doing to the January 6 people, the operation that was an inside job. That's all shove. Now we are transitioning ever so slightly into the shoot phase. We've already had 2 missed shoot actions. Now they are going after soft targets, still in shove, but they have made it very clear that they are ready to go to shoot. Mr. Rankin, the congressman from Maryland, has already said, or already kind of telegraphed the next move by saying that if Trump wins during January of next year, if they have to, they will try to instigate a civil conflict in this country. Okay? My military mind understands this completely. When they were doing terrorist attacks, or asymmetrical counter operations or insurgent operations against us in theater, many of the things that they would do would be to, for example, shoot aimlessly in the dark at night, just over our heads to intimidate us, send indirect fire, maybe hit a target, maybe not, just to test our reaction and to test to see what happened, right? They would watch for our convoys and our modes of operation, And then once they learned enough about us, or they would try to sow chaos with us, and then learn how we acted in chaos. And then once they learned about what we were doing, that would give them a better picture of action the next time. Okay? So that is a principle of any type of asymmetric or even symmetric or conventional warfare. Okay? So, in keeping with the Cloward and Piven thing, okay, let's go back to the impeachment of Donald Trump with Ukraine. Why were they pressing him so hard for that phone call to Zelensky? Why? Because Donald Trump was going to start investigating the Biden family and the Democrat Party and their links in Ukraine back in 2019. You remember the first impeachment? We didn't understand it all then, but after all this shit broke out with Ukraine and Burisma and Zelensky and all this other stuff, we understand this now. Okay? We had, when Donald Trump left office, and we are legally allied to the nation of Israel. So us giving Israel money or us sharing weapons, technology, and intelligence with Israel is legal. We have a treaty with that country. It is, it's like us operating with NATO, okay? We had the Abraham Accords. In essence, we had formed an alliance with us, the Israelis, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emirates, and a bunch of other Sunni Muslim countries that were not Ba'athist. Okay? So, Syria, Iraq were left out. Okay? Now, we also did away with the Iran nuclear deal, and we cut Iran off. Biden, when he gets in office, what does he do? He tears that deal up, violates the Abraham Accords, the peace treaty that we had just signed and ratified, and then releases $600 billion to the Iranians, and within 3 years, they're attacking our ally Israel. Biden also violated the Minsk agreement that was made in 2019 between Zelensky, Trump, and Putin, along with the European Union, by making it possible for the Ukraine to join NATO, or to request to join NATO, even though Donald Trump, Zelensky, and Putin made the Minsk agreement in 2019 to leave Ukraine as a neutral country, open to assistance, trade, and everything else from both the Russians and the United States and NATO. So it was just kind of a free exchange zone. 2000, Vladimir Putin approached the Clinton organization and requested that the Russians be part of NATO. But Clinton told him no. In 1991, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Sandy Baker, who was the Secretary of State for both Reagan and Bush Sr., made an agreement with the former Soviet Union, now in the newly founded Russian Federation, that in exchange for East Germany becoming reunited with Germany, or with West Germany, that NATO would take on Poland and go no further east. That was a treaty we made with the Russians in 1991. So all this backdoor dealing that Trump was trying to investigate with Ukraine, that got him impeached, the peace deals that he made with Israel, and the defunding of Iran, was all undone during the Biden administration. instigate war with Russia. Oh, and Trump had agreements with China too. We were negotiating with North Korea, and we were negotiating on Taiwan. That got thrown in the trash. So now the Biden administration is trying to destroy within and trying to rouse our enemies to destroy it from without. How is this part of Cloward and Pivot? Top down, bottom up, inside out. How is all of this in line with Zelensky? Sowing chaos. Does this make sense? These are the exact tactics that terrorists, be they Islamic terrorists, be they the IRA, be they pro-communist terrorists, they all use the same tactics. All of them. In asymmetrical warfare, all levels. This is not yet a kinetic war yet. But it is a kinetic proxy war in the Middle East. It is a kinetic proxy war in Ukraine that could very well suck us into a kinetic direct war. And if Mr. Ruth was taking people from the United States and other NATO countries and other foreign entities over to augment the Ukraine army, then in essence, that was also a violation of the treaties we've made with Russia between 1992 and now. And we are actually the aggressor, and we are on the verge of a direct kinetic war right now. Meanwhile, we're being flooded from the south, not from Mexico. The Mexicans don't even like what's going on with our immigration problem, and here's why. Because all of those people have to traipse through that country, and my girlfriend, who is a legal resident in the United States, but is from Mexico, still has a lot of family in Mexico, tells me that all these migrants that are flooding into this country, as they come up, are destroying her country. So the Mexicans don't even want this. This has got the Mexicans pissed off at us now, too. We had an agreement with Mexico to protect our border and actually to help them protect their southern border at Guatemala and Belize. And the reason why is because it's a much smaller border, much shorter border, and we figured that in cooperation with the Mexican government, it would be easier for us to secure all three of the major North American nations by securing that, I guess it's like a 300-mile border along Guatemala and Belize versus trying to secure a 2,000-mile border with Mexico and leaving Mexico wide open. Why? Because Mexico is our number one trading partner, and up until the Bidens took over, in spite of what they tell you about President Trump, Mexico was our ally. Now Mexico can't even count on us, and the Mexican government is considering joining BRICS and forming alliances with countries that they feel that they can trust more. Because them leaving our border wide open, you think it's destroying our country, it is bringing Mexico to its knees. Because those cartels have to come through Mexico and operate in Mexico to traffic all of that stuff up here. When Trump was in office, by the time Trump left office, Mexico was almost a secure country itself. So now, two countries, one by proxy and the other by direct, are being overrun and flooded demographically to destroy that alliance, because that alliance would have set up North America to be the richest region in the world. It's now in danger. That would have been the United States, Mexico, and Canada. That's why Trump negotiated the deal that he did, because it was going to be good for all three nations and give all three nations security and make those the three richest nations in the world: Mexico, the United States, and Canada. But thank you very much, Joe Biden. Thank you. So 100% asymmetrical warfare. We are being invaded, mostly by OTMs, from people from 158 different countries, most of them not friendlies. The Mexican government is so mad at us right now, they can't even stand it. Because in order for those people to get here, they have to run across their country and they're destroying it. We had an agreement with Mexico in 2020, actually 2018, and it was supposed to be in place by 2021, where us and the Mexican Border Patrol would secure the Mexican border with Guatemala and Belize, and pretty much along with the security wall here along our border, pretty much put an end to the border problems for both countries. We are at war. And I think the only reason why Putin and Xi have not, even though they are our enemies, we made Putin into an enemy. We actually pushed him towards the Chinese. Putin approached us in the early 2000s, and actually, during the first 2 years of the War on Terror, when President Bush was in office, they were actually helping us. Yes. Aeroflot, which is a Russian airline, was paid by the Russian Federation to help us fly supplies and military equipment into the Middle East to help us prosecute the wars that we were engaged in there until 2008. I know this because I was there and I saw Aeroflot planes helping our Air Force transport supplies in and out of the U. So at one point, the Russians were helping us, but we managed to push them all the way into the arms of the Chinese. We've alienated India. We've completely alienated the Saudis, and we're in the process of alienating the Israelis. The Saudis and the Israelis are working together still, thank God. Joe Biden has pissed off even our closest neighbor, Mexico, which was our number one trading partner, to the point now that even people from Mexico want Donald Trump to win. And if Joe Biden loses, Mexico is set to open negotiations with the Chinese and the Russians for them to set up naval bases along their coast. And to begin cooperative exercises with those governments because they cannot trust us anymore. The same could be said about the Brazilians, the Colombians, and the Chileans. Argentina is pretty much operating on its own and will operate on its own. But if Trump in office, Argentina will obviously be one of our allies. So that is the global strategic picture and the internal picture. So basically what the Biden-Harris administration has done is the classic Saul Alinsky tactic of isolation and demonization. Only, as Marcus Aurelius warned us in the classic Roman texts about the traitor being the one within who speaks in our tongues, only he managed to do it from within they managed to do it from within our borders. They are this close. They are so close that they are willing to eliminate and start a civil war. They're willing to go to that measure if they have to. Do not be surprised if they try. If Kamala wins, it will be more peaceful initially, but we will be ground down into a fascist autocracy. So it's kind of like we're in the Weimar phase right now. If Trump wins, it will be initially violent, but in the long term, it will be better. Trump has taken over the Republican Party. He is being given free rein to select his staff. Here are people that I expect to see in his cabinet. Health and Human Services will be Robert F. Kennedy Jr., unless he decides to drop J.D. Vance, which is a distinct possibility, and give him the vice presidential seat. For right now, he'll be at HHS. Department of Education will be Dr. Ben Carson. Department of Homeland Security will likely be Dan Bongino. Department of Justice will be Rudolph Giuliani. He's pretty much confirmed that without confirming it today in his speech earlier today in New York City. Secretary of State will most likely be Vivek Ramaswamy. Elon Musk, unless he's put on a special commission, or along with being put on a special commission, will likely be what's the one that's in charge of commerce? Y'all, I'm tired. But I think Ramaswamy will be on that. He'll either be there or he will be at Department of State. State Department, I think, even though she very well might win her seat at her Senate seat in Arizona, I hope that he doesn't pull her. But if he does, it will either be Carrie Lake or it might be Ted Cruz. Let's see. Commerce Secretary will be Ramaswamy for sure. He'll either that or be in state. One of the two. Let's see here. Department of Defense will be Flynn. Either that or Flynn will be National Security Advisor again. Or, actually, it might be Nick Freitas. Very well could be Nick Freitas. I could see Nick Freitas at either National Security, which it could either be General Flynn, or Nick Freitas. Let's see here. Press Secretary, probably Glenn Beck will probably be his press secretary. Either him or Anton Daniels. Yes, I believe Anton Daniels will probably be in a cabinet position. Department of Interior will probably go to Sarah Palin. Let's see, who else? Department of Education, he's probably going to try and do away with it. Now, here's the thing, right? The last time he tried to make his cabinet appointments, he fought with the Senate and with Congress, even with people in his own party. This time around, I think he's going to do what's known as recess appointments, meaning that he'll put them up, he'll watch them get shot down, and then he'll wait for Congress to adjourn and then appoint them on recess. And he'll just keep doing recess appointments every year to keep them in place. It's a pain in the ass, but it is a legal move, and that's the way he will get the people that he wants. So those are probably some of the cabinet members that he's going to have on staff. But yeah, Giuliani for sure will be at DOJ. That's for sure. Kennedy will be at Health and Human Services. That is for sure. Dr. Fauci, you're going to jail. I can see Flynn either at National Security Advisor, or Flynn or Freitas either at National Security Advisor or Department of Defense. One of them will be at one of them will be in the other. Anton Daniels, you're going to be on that cabinet somewhere. You're probably going to be the press secretary. Or no, Quebec will be press secretary. Where did I say Anton's going to be on the cabinet somewhere. I promise you. Okay. So will Ben Carson. Ben Carson, I said, we're going to be at the Department of Education. And he will probably be the man to shut it down. If they don't get it shut down, he'll clean it up. Department of Energy. I could see Greg Abbott, maybe. Maybe Greg Abbott. Or Dan Kirkpatrick. Actually, maybe, what's his name? Bruce King's son. Out of New Mexico, Mr. King. Or he could pick an oil man. He might even go with the guy from West Virginia. Damn it. Oh, Manchin. I could see Manchin filling that position because West Virginia is a cold state. I could see Joe Manchin doing that. That also could be an option, even though he's a Democrat. He's an independent Democrat. But Manchin would be good in that position. Because like I said, he's from West Virginia. That's a cold state. He is energy friendly. So, but Anton, you will probably, if not a direct cabinet secretary, you'll be an undersecretary. I promise you that, Mr. Daniels. You are going to be on Trump's team. Angry man, I would keep your phone open too, because you never know. You know Trump watches you guys, right? He really does. I know he does. Angry man, you could be working for the Trump team too. Never know. But let's go back to the topic of asymmetric warfare. Trump knows this. We all know this. And he's going to pick his team. And if he wins, we will win this war. But just because we win the election doesn't mean that it's over with. Because the time between the election and inauguration will actually be the most dangerous time. And let's get another thing straight too. I am in tight with the Mexican community. I've been in tight with the Mexican community ever since I was a boy. I grew up in New Mexico, a majority Hispanic state. I lived a large portion of my adult life in Arizona, which is right next door. I'm now in Colorado. There is a very large immigrant presence here, working on the farms and ranches. And even the residents here that are still Mexican citizens, but are legal residents, are hoping that Donald Trump wins as well. The legal ones are, because they're not afraid of being deported. They've got their cards, they're good to go. But the reason why they hope Donald Trump wins is because they understand very clearly that if Trump secures this country and deals with the immigration problem in this country, it will in turn help their country too. Because a strong America makes for a strong and secure Mexico. They understand this. This is why a large portion of the Hispanic community is turning away from the Democrats. Yes, they're still majority Democrat, but privately, I'll say this, a lot of the Hispanic people that are American citizens, a larger portion of them are still Democrat or Democrat sympathizing, but even a plurality, a large minority of them are turning towards the Trump team. But almost every Mexican resident that I talk to here now prays for Donald Trump to win, because they want their country safe too. They still have family over there, and they now understand, because of what's going on with Biden and what the immigrant crisis is doing, both to the United States and to Mexico. They now understand that Trump is their guy. And they tell me that the people at home, their family in Mexico, wants Trump to win too, for obvious reasons. But the evil powers are going to fight this. So, para la gente, para mis amigos mexicanos, aquí en los Estados Unidos y allá en México, tengo una oración para ustedes también, porque nosotros sabemos que el señor Trump es bueno para la seguridad de los Estados Unidos y a ustedes país también. Y ojalá que él se gana y él tiene la protección del Señor para el futuro de mi país, de los Estados Unidos, y a ustedes país, los Estados Unidos de México también, porque toda la gente aquí y toda la gente allá necesitan paz y seguridad para esta nación de los Estados Unidos. Está bueno también de la seguridad de México, a los dos. Y el victorio de Donald Trump es bueno para la paz del mundo. Porque este hombre de los Estados Unidos se ve mucha guerra. No quiero más guerra al mundo. Es el tiempo para paz. para toda la gente, en particular a los dos países de los Estados Unidos y México. This is AL-BINO signing out.